In this lesson, we'll review a vocabulary in context problem. It's part of the critical reading section. We're on page 900, question 16. These vocab and context questions, pretty typical. You usually see on average one per long passage, and there are 4 of them. Anytime you have a very specific word or sometimes a phrase in quotes, and the question will ask what that word or phrase means, it'll have a line number to reference what the definition is in context. So the best advice I can give you for these vocab and context questions, it's never going to be the primary meaning of the word. It's always going to be a secondary or alternative meaning of that word. So you really have to sort of glean what the word means in context. They're not really too difficult. So let's take a look here. Crude in line 17. So for reference, hopefully you've read this passage on page 8, or it's actually this is on 901, and the passage is on 900. But if you've read this, you know it's nonfiction from the italics. It's written by a well-known doctor and essayist for his 1996 book about rare neurological disorders. So even though it starts out, I am writing this with my left hand, although I am strongly right-handed, I had surgery of my right shoulder a month ago. I'm not permitted, not capable of use of the right arm at this time. So even though it's a first-person narrative, it is still nonfiction. And the reason I brought this up before, that first paragraph will give you the main theme. And the main theme is he's really sort of adjusting over time because he had surgery on his right shoulder. He can't use his right side or his arm. He's really kind of adjusting or adapting to doing everything sort of left-handed dominant. And if you've read this, where he said at first he was off balance, but now he's become quite adept or skilled, and it goes on. And here, so we went line 17. I always like to read these in context. So this is line 14. And so this is after he's seen the progress over the last month of getting adjusted to his left side. And he states, there must be changes going on with some of the programs and circuits in my brain, altering synaptic weights and connectivities and signals, parentheses, though are, sorry, a couple of mistakes here, are, not A-R-E-O-U-R, methods of brain imaging are still too crude to show these. We need to figure out what crude means in this context. Now, if you just saw crude by itself, you typically would think of something like offensive or vulgar, and those are the primary meanings, and it could never be right. Besides what I told you, they could never be right because these are virtually synonymous. There's not enough distinction, and it's not offensive or vulgar. You can kind of predict him. He's saying there must be something going on, the circuits in my brain, altering the connectivities and signals, though our methods of brain imaging to validate that are still too crude. You can kind of just predict they really haven't been developed. They're still sort of basic, so it's certainly not natural or obvious. It's simply undeveloped. This is not a hard question, and you'll see other vocab and context. The vocab gets a little tougher, but just remember, it is never the primary meaning. It's always the secondary. And so the answer here is simply D. See you next time. Thanks for watching.